Welcome, guys, to another episode of the Leadership to Wealth podcast. I'm your host, Neil D'Souza, and our guest today is a self-taught entrepreneur with 4 businesses who's read hundreds of books in the area of leadership, fundraising, finance, coaching, entrepreneurship, mindset, and most importantly, overcoming limiting beliefs. Now, currently he's building Squadra Holdings, a performance-based hedge fund, and which is focused in technology and a diversified portfolio. He's also manages Alteza Capital, an independent consulting firm dedicated to connecting qualified investors and vetted startups. Now, and the third one, and this may be interesting to some of you, is NXT Digital, which is partners with artists around the world to help their work to get recognition, compensation, and it's really in that NFT space, in that world that many of us are not sure what that's all about. But lastly, and not least, is his very own coaching and mentorship business with helping individuals reach their full potential and building their dreams, which we all are all about. Guest today, Tom Mays.
Appreciate it so much. Thanks for having me here.
Well, it's great to have you. I got to ask you the most obvious question. How are you able to do all of that? You've got your hand in so many different areas. How are you able to do all of that and be good at it?
Yeah, great question. For me, it's 2 things. One is horizontal integration with the businesses. So having businesses that complement each other opposed to being totally separate. You know, I'm not running a finance company and a landscaping company that have nothing to do with one another, right? So with Squadra Holdings, it's a hedge fund, commodity and currency trading fund. So I'm networking with a lot of investors. A lot of people are asking us to invest in their companies, even though we don't do that. So that's what created Alteza Capital, which is the consulting firm that connects investors and projects, right? Because we already have a lot of that on hand. And then with that business, when we raise money for companies, we need to do a lot of consulting work to help them use the funds effectively. So that's what, the coaching consulting business with Alteza, as well as there's another business called Alita International Consultants. We have about 12 consultants that help with scalability. And then we've got the only one that's pretty separate is NXT Digital, which is quite on the back burner for the past year, I'd say. We're still really interested in research and development in the Web3 space because I believe there's a lot of potential in it moving forward. But of course, there's a ton of landmines in that space as well. So you really got to be careful with that. But for me, it's really choosing businesses that are horizontally integrated so they can complement one another so they're not totally separate. And then, of course, having a great team and great partners and great people that you can work with, that you can rely on to assist you build those businesses. I've always said, I'd rather have 1% of something large instead of 100% of something small. So I believe a lot in delegation and sharing the pie.
Yeah. Now let me ask you, how, you've got multiple businesses and most people will look at starting up one business as being quite the task. How were you able to know and see that, okay, I need to create this next business, or wanting to, what kind of led to you diversifying, even if it's horizontally, what still led to you realizing that it's time to create another business?
Yeah, it was really identifying the opportunity. Starting any kind of business, that's the very first step, is identifying the opportunity. So whether you're working for somebody else and you think, I really think a company should be fulfilling this need, I should start to work on seeing if I can build it out. So when I started with the very first business, that was the total focus. And then, as I mentioned, when I was building Squadra Holdings, it made sense. I was leaving a lot of money on the table. These people were asking us if they could invest in real estate, if they could invest into tech startups, these family offices, once they would invest with us. And I was like, well, I wish I could help them. I wish I had a way to make money with them, right? They're literally asking me if they can invest elsewhere. So
Yeah.
why can't I provide a vehicle? And then, 2 weeks later, I'd have a company say, hey, we're a tech company. We're trying to raise $5 million. And I'm like, wow, I just had a family office saying they're looking for something like this 2 weeks ago. So a lot of it is just kind of like slowing down and taking your blinders off. If you're so focused on that one thing, you're not going to see anything else but that one thing. So if you do want to look for the other opportunities to start new businesses, then you need to slow down and listen to what the marketplace is telling you. And there's a lot of different opinions on this. Like a lot of people say, just focus on one business, just do one business, build it up, build it big. I did that for years. I found that I didn't like it as much with my personality. I like to be working on multiple projects at the same time. I'm a total workaholic. I work from 7 a.m. to 10, 11 p.m. every day. So even when I'm working in one business, I can generally get the work done very quickly because I'll delegate it to other people. I'll work with teams of people, and then I'll run out of things to do. And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't have enough work to do. Like I'm freaking out. So then I need to start something new, right? So it's really about your goals, what you want to pursue with the business or businesses, and what your personality aligns with, and then listening to the marketplace, identifying opportunities, and then testing it. Fail forward. Try business. If it doesn't work, try another one. Fail forward.
Yeah. So what sort of led you into that? Were you feeling like, hey, I'm pigeonholed where I am. I want to do something else. I want to break out. How did you even start down that rabbit hole of breaking into entrepreneurship, starting your own business?
Yeah, that started in like grade 5.
Okay, early bird.
So grade 5, I really analyzed like the lives of people in my family. I'd look at, my cousins and aunts who would struggle with money. They'd have to get a new roof on their house, and, they'd be stressing about that, or brakes for their car, and they'd be stressing about that. And then I had a couple family members that were more well off, where they could go on nice trips, and they could, buy nice food, and they could have a nice home and all that kind of stuff. So then I realized, if it's a choice, I choose to have more than less.
Well, okay, wait. I gotta just jump in quickly and ask this question before I forget it.
Yeah.
What would get a kid in grade 5 to be analyzing this stuff when you're probably supposed to be running around on the playground, like Will Smith for the rest of your days? What got you to be looking around and look at these things? What was going on that you were interested in that you were noticing that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was kind of just like inherently in me. I've always been very analytical. I used to drive my parents absolutely insane, my mom and dad, because I'd always ask questions. I had this like huge natural curiosity. And I remember we were driving to Kamloops. It's a 3-hour drive. We're in the truck, and I'm like, Dad, like, how are lamps made? Like how is a car made? And then I'm like asking him all these questions. And I finally asked the last question. I was like, how is glass made? And then my dad's like, for crying out loud, for Christ's sake, Tom, just stop asking me so many questions. And I was like, okay, relax. But I was probably like 8, 7 years old at that point. So I've always had like a very natural curiosity about myself, just wanting to learn about as many things as possible. So that's, I think, how a lot of this came to be, where I started to be curious about like, well, why does that person get to travel to nice places, and why does my family not? Like, why do we only get to go out for dinner once a week because we need to watch the money that we're spending? Meanwhile, those other people get to go out for dinner all the time, So that's kind of where it started. And then, like, we were never super well off. We were quite comfortable. We did go through a little bit of a tougher time when my parents divorced. So then I was like, oh, my mom's struggling. I definitely want to assist with that, and I don't want to see my family and friends struggle. So then it created the curiosity about money. And I really saw that, wow, if you have more money, you have more options. If you have less money, you have less options.
Wow. And how old were you when that was happening and you were realizing that?
Probably like I started to think about it in probably like grade 3, but then more like grade 5, grade 6 is when it started to make more sense. Yeah, because
Yeah.
then I was asking questions like, how do you make money? How does a store work? That kind
Yeah.
of stuff.
Okay, I've got maybe this is a little off tangent, but since you're sharing a little bit about the personal side, I think it's person's backstory is important. And you said that your parents separated, and I'm curious, what was that like for you? And maybe juxtapose that with where you are today. What did that do for you with regards to relationships? Because you're a workaholic now. You love working around the clock, and that's obviously got to put a strain on relationships. And and did it affect? Do you see some effects from that point in time in your
And you're
life?
talking romantic relationships?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Definitely, like when I think of relationships as whole, like starting with friendships, like definitely my strongest friendships are people that are driven and pursuing,
yeah.
the same alignment as to me with similar goals and ambitions. Just because that's the people that I resonate with, and you have limited time, so you spend it with people that are pursuing the same things. As far as romantic relationships, is definitely a tough one for sure, because I just want to work so much. I'm so dedicated to it, so I
Yeah.
don't have a lot of time for romantic relationships, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, haven't
Yeah.
spent much time with that.
Now, I'm just fascinated. Maybe you have an answer, maybe you don't, but do you see a connection between what happened with your parents and and was there any link for you to go, yeah, maybe that's not the place to invest time? Because most most guys, once you hit those teenage years, testosterone kicks in, and we're not thinking about money at that point in time, right? You
Mhm.
oftentimes you need to get through. Some guys you need to get through your 20s before you even are able to refocus, because you just go down that road. And so I'm just curious if, because you started at a much earlier age than most people in terms of entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
businesses and that. Do you think that maybe something there might have turned your direction, or maybe some choices you made?
That's a great question. Like I probably should sit down with a psychiatrist and figure out all of this kind of stuff to
Yeah.
see like what influenced it and what didn't. But now that you mention that, like even in high school, I dabbled. I wouldn't say dabbled, like went out with a couple girls here and there, but it was never really like a huge focus of mine. Like I
Yeah.
really identified that money was the solution to my problems, good or
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
like. And I just said, fuck everything else. I just want to build businesses. I want to make money, right? So then I never had a girlfriend until literally, yeah, I've had one girlfriend. And that was when I was 25, 26. So I didn't
Wow.
have any girlfriends from, yeah. Like I would say like a casual, like 1 month, 2 month, 3 month thing, but like nothing significant. But yeah, it's just didn't even bother me. It's just wanted to work.
Ladies, if you're listening to this and you're wondering why I'm so amazed, jump over to the YouTube channel and take a look at the model that I'm talking to, because he looks like he could be in a fashion magazine. He's got the looks, he's got the hair, the scruffy debonair look. So I'm in complete awe that would be the case, but it you'd think that women were throwing themselves at you, which may have been the case, but you were so focused. And it is interesting because, I look at my own situation and think of, the stuff that I went through with family dynamics, and which was quite difficult. And my parents continually fighting with one another. And a lot of that was around money. And so that gave me a drive in to go that way. But I also had a bit of an arrogance with regards to believing that I could figure out this relationship thing as well.
Hmm.
And whereas other siblings were they were like, no, I'm not doing anything with that. And so it's interesting how each person, based on their situation, can come up with completely opposite ends of the spectrum on things like
Yeah,
that.
totally. And like for me, like more I think about my mindset, it was more like I'll just do it later. I'll figure it out later. Like
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
money now. I can have all the relationships I want. I can travel.
Yeah.
I can do this. I can do that. And like the thought of like a serious long-term monogamous relationship for the next 50, 60 years of my life, I was just like, why not like live it up and do what I want to do on my own for the first majority of my or first section of my life. And then once I figure out who I am, what I truly want, what my goals are, accomplish some of those goals, then put more time and effort into that. I always saw a lot of people like jumping from relationship to relationship to relationship. And I just saw like, man, that's a huge waste of time. Like in my opinion, your 6 months relationship, year-long relationship, and then they're so depressed for 2 or 3 years after they break up, and they weren't focused on their goals. And I was just like, I don't want any of that. No, thank you.
Yeah. That's really interesting, for a lot of different reasons. But it's really interesting because I know there's a lot of people that are, especially when you're younger and you're trying to figure out that stage of what do I do next, and which way do I go? I've got teenagers now that are trying to figure out which way do I go? Do I go to university? Do I go to college? Do I just get a job? Do I start the what's this called, like entrepreneurship culture? Do I start a side hustle? And now my daughters, they went straight into university. My sons, they're still trying to figure it out. And so it's interesting to hear that mindset and what you're looking at. And I do think it's interesting as men, there is sort of I don't know if proclivity is the right word. There is a leaning towards wanting to build something, wanting to get good at building a business, at a job, a career, something like that, and not moving towards relationships initially. And it seems to be more like that as society moves along. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think society is moving towards that. And like for myself too, like when I was I was reading a book a month, or sometimes I was reading a book a week, and like I would grow so quickly. And my mindset would change so drastically after a year of reading books, after 6 months of reading books, after, doing sales meetings, building sales teams. And I really thought like, man, like I don't even know who I am. Like I can read a book and then I'll be like, holy shit, that changes everything. Like I thought this perception, but it's a philosophy book and it changes everything. So now like even the people I want to hang out with, people I want to be around has changed because I read this book. So I just thought like, if I'm changing this quickly, like I don't know who I am. Like, so then what's the benefit of going into a relationship when I first think I want this in a relationship, but in 6 months from now, I might want something different. You know what I mean? So again, it was like, Tom, just like focus on you, man. Like build your own stuff, figure out who you are, figure out what you like. I mean, how many times have we started a business or started a sport and you think you really enjoy it, and then 6 months down the road or a year down the road, you don't like it anymore. You want to change to something else, right?
Yeah.
And I just saw that over and over and over again in my own personality and what I wanted, my life goals. And I was just like, man, just focus on you, figure out what you want, build some things, do what you want, be a person of significance. And, after that, then options will open up. You'll have more doors open, they're not going to close. They're just going to open more. So why not just focus on that? Yeah.
Oh, okay. You just said something powerful there. You said focus on being a person of significance. Flip side to that, were you feeling like, hey, I've not done anything with my life, or
Totally.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I can see the smirk across your face.
Totally.
Come on, tell us that story. What was going on?
Yeah, like I love Alex Hormozy says it really well. Like the 3 things that drive super ambitious people. It's like lack thereof. They don't think that there's something significant. So they're running away from something. And then they have huge dreams and goals. So they're running towards something. And I forget the third thing. Oh, they can have delayed gratification for a long period of time. And like that was me. Like I was never, it was weird. It was a combination of like, I want to be something huge, but it was a part of that where it's like, I don't want to be something small. So there was a huge negativity side of it where it was like, I'm insignificant. I'm not something progressive. I'm not smart. I'm not good looking. I'm not strong. I'm not confident. I'm weak. Like that was a huge narrative in my life for a really long period of time until I was probably like 16, 17, 18, 19, when I started to kind of grow out of that with a lot of reading and a lot of mentorship and a lot of coaching from my coaches. And so yeah, there's a huge negative part of my life that really fueled a lot of that. And a lot of it was like frustration and anger as well. It was like, why am I not better? Why am I not bigger? Why am I not doing more? Why can't I accomplish more? Like that was huge, huge, huge fuel. And I would say that was like 95% of my fuel until I was probably like 21, 22, and then maybe decreased it from like 95% to like 80% from 23, 24. And then I've probably got it down to maybe like 40% now, where I'm like, no, I want to build things because I want to, and I'm grateful and I'm happy and I'm joyful and I'm doing this because I want to. My coach just beats this into my head every day. He's like, do it because you want to, like, have fun, enjoy the journey, have a great time. Like, stop thinking about like, oh, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I'm not doing enough, I should be accomplishing more. Everything needs to be perfect all the time. Like there's a huge, power in negativity and huge power in positivity. And you've got to really like manage your mindset. And I think Tony Robbins, is it Tony Robbins or Tim Bilyeu? They say it the best. Like you want to live kind of like 80-20, like 80% of the time live in positivity, right? And then 20% of the time use the negativity as fuel, where I was totally the other way. It was like 95% negativity, where I was not enough. I was not doing enough. I was frustrated. I was angry. I was never good enough.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes. 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 It completely resonating with what you're saying.
These are good questions, man. I haven't gotten into any of this stuff on a podcast before.
Well, I think the power of it is everyone sees the Instagram view of it, and it's really this stuff that's going on in the background that oftentimes can limit us. People don't realize that everybody else out there that's making money also has fears. They also have insecurities. They also have, and I was just sharing with a fellow investor the other day, 2 days ago, and I said to him, I said, look, sometimes you're running towards something, sometimes you're running away from it.
Totally.
And there's usually a balance in there somewhere. And as you go on through your life, there's always some sort of ratio there which you just described exactly, right? That there's always some bit of it. And hopefully as you mature, you're able to spend more time on the positive side, on the joy, on the peace, on the creative side, rather than that fear side.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And when I coach and mentor people now, like I really see that in people. It's like, wow, this guy's super driven, super negative, but super driven. Oh, this guy's super driven, super positive, right? And then you got to balance them out. And I would say more than not, it's more negative than it is positive with most people that I see in today's society, because we're programmed that with social media. You're always comparing yourself to other people that are doing better, and there's always a 22-year-old that just became a billionaire, or they made $150 million, and you're 25 and you're like, whoa, I've got 100 grand. It's like, that's not enough, right? So you're always comparing. But and I like to tell people too, like when I first started in business and entrepreneurship, I was like the most introverted, scared kid you've ever met in your life. Like I was. Wait.
When you started, you were introverted and scared.
Totally terrified.
Okay.
terrified of talking to people, terrified of speaking up, like terrified. Like I first got like an affiliate marketing, associate position. I was helping some people sell some different products. I did a lot of affiliate marketing when I first started in business when I was like 17, 18 years old. And I would get to like a Tim Hortons coffee shop like 20 minutes before I'd have a meeting with a potential client. And I would call my coach and mentor and I would be in the cold sweats. I'd be like freaking out, like total panic attack, freaking out in my car. I don't know what to say to this guy. I don't know what to do. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know what to say, blah, 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 blah. Just freaking out. What am I going to do? I'm going to screw it up. I'm going to do this. And my coach at the time, he would just be like, dude, you're going to be fine. Just go in, have a conversation. And at the beginning, I couldn't even pitch people. I couldn't even do sales. I would literally, like, my goal would be to get in the coffee shop, have a meeting with that person and just chat for like 5 minutes. 5-10 minutes. If I could do that, that was my first goal. You know what I mean? Like that's how nervous I was. That's how like much I had to develop my people skills, how much I had to develop my confidence, how much I had to remove self-doubt and negativity so that I could actually like progress. And people now, they see me, pitching to investors or doing podcasts. And it's like, I didn't start here, guys. Like I was the most introverted, nervous, scared person you've ever met. And it was just like years and years of just like going through that painful work to develop that side. It's a lot of work.
That's really interesting. On the investor side, I have a lot of people that are always asking me the question about, hey, how do you get investors? And because they think there's some sort of magic formula, and I'm like, I have had coffees and shaking hands, right? Having coffees and shaking hands, having drinks and shaking hands and just talking to people. And you have to, I still don't really think of myself as good in the area in sales or whatever people think of as sales. But I've found that for me, I've spent a lifetime listening to people and getting to know where they're coming from so that then what's important to them. And if that works, then some people call that a sale, but if that works, you create that partnership.
Yeah I would say my favorite way to like navigate sales or teach it to somebody new is don't try to sell, just try to sort, try to filter. Like listen to people's needs.
Don't sell, sort. Give us this breakdown.
Exactly. So if you're, networking and meeting people, listen to their needs, their wants, their desires, and their pain points. And if someone says, hey, I'm really, really, really thirsty, I need a bottle of water, get them a freaking bottle of water. Don't go and try to sell them a hamburger. You know what I mean? So when you're going through all these relationships, you're drinking the drinks, you're having the coffees, and people say they want to invest in this, they're interested in this, they're interested in that, they hate this, they hate that. Don't try to convince somebody of something that they don't want. Just take note of it and be like, oh, last week I met 10 people that have health issues. And, right now I'm selling a vitamin that really could help them with that health issue. Then go and try to talk with them and see if you can help them, purchase that product. You're not trying to convince somebody that, is a nutritionist and they have all of the vitamins that they need and they don't want anything. Like, why are you trying to bother that person? Right? Go to the people that want what you have.
I think people miss something really simple in what you shared there. If someone's thirsty and they're looking for water and I've got water bottles, then great. Hey, I've got water for sale. Here, I got water. Now, if they're looking for that hamburger, hey, you know what? My friend Tom right over here, he sells hamburgers. And you can introduce them to Tom, as opposed to many people take it as a slight, as that there's something wrong with them. I had water. Why didn't I have water and hamburgers? I need to have water and hamburgers.
Or why didn't I convince him that he needs water instead of hamburger?
Yes. I didn't have, if I was really good, I would have convinced him that he didn't want a hamburger and that he wanted water. And That's just that might be a used car salesman trick, but I think if you're really wanting to build lasting relationships and with people for down the road for decades, then the key is really to think about what they need and what's in their best interest.
And I did enough sales to the point where like you can close people, you can convince people to do something that they don't really want to do. I've done it, we've all done it. Like, but the problem with that is when you convince that person to, buy the water bottle instead of the hamburger, right? Great, successful. You made a sale. So that person bought your water when they really wanted the hamburger. Now, chances are that person in the next 2 weeks, well, it would be food and water. So within the next 2-3 hours, they're pissed at you because they're like, man, I wish I spent my money on a hamburger. I was hungry. Like,
yes.
Like, why did you convince me so hard to, buy this water bottle? And, I've convinced people to buy things that, that they didn't really need. And then they come back to me a month later, 2 months later, and they're like, Tom, like, I appreciate you. We bought this, but, they're not a happy client. They're not happy. I made them do something that they didn't necessarily want to do because I was a quote unquote good salesman, like that's not what I want to do. I want the investors and the relationships of people being like, Tom, I wanted that. You got exactly what I wanted to have. And I'm so happy that was a great relationship. I don't want the people to be like, Tom, I wanted this. You convinced me to do this. And, you just start creating weird relationships, right?
Well, look, it makes sense if we're talking about water and hamburgers. You're selling that to the person and they're going to move on. They're going to decide that they wanted a hamburger after all. But when we're talking about in the world of investing and business, you really want to make sure that you're thinking longer term. One of the things that I realized is I absolutely do not want to sell someone. In fact, I actually want to disqualify someone. It's better for me to decline that, because otherwise I'm going to be hearing from them all the time. I'm worried about that. What happened? As opposed to if this is what they really want, then what they're really looking for, especially in the area of real estate, I'm going to have to handhold somebody all the way every time they're scared. Phone calls in the middle of the night.
We call those active investors.
Yeah, right. So it's actually better. I find that it's more beneficial to really vet someone and make sure that it's in line with what they're trying to achieve, rather than the quick fix because you're going to pay for it for a long time afterwards.
Totally. And to use an example in that space, let's say that you've got, a 70-year-old lady who wants something that's super conservative. She wants something that, has appreciation of maybe, 5 to 10% over a year, nice steady returns. Meanwhile, you put her in a crypto investment that goes like 30% up one day and 25% down the next day. Like that lady's going to be pissed. She's going to be calling you and be like, what's going on? Like, this is crazy. Like, my money's down 50%. It's only been 2 months. Like, it's just nice to use a really extreme example of how you can, sure, you sold them. Great. You made larger commission. Great. You did this. But like, you've just ruined that relationship moving forward for future business. Right. And do you really feel good about that? I don't want to build a business like that.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned, I heard the word, it jumped out at me. You mentioned about commodities. What type of commodities are you involved with?
Oil, silver, gold, copper, and then we do currency, USD, CAD, Euro, USD trading primarily. A little bit of soybean and wheat as well, but not too much.
Okay. Now, this is really interesting. I'm sure that most people that are listening that's not the first thing that you jump into. Now, I'm interested in some of the things that you just mentioned, but how did you get into some of those markets?
Mostly by, association. So when I first started doing affiliate marketing, actually, I was working with some companies that were trading like algorithms or selling algorithms, as well as like trading tools for the financial market. So I was building sales teams of selling this software to a variety of different companies and people, and then just learned a lot more about finance, commodities, currencies, etc. And then Met a couple different traders that were really good in that space, and then realized, hey, it's a correlated diversified asset. That would be nice to raise capital for. So then we started a company with that.
Okay. I mean, I'm originally East Indian, and Indians don't really trust their government, haven't historically. So hence all the stories are true about Indians and gold, and trying to keep gold, because we know that governments typically will devalue the currency, and so that's been a way that the culture has protected itself from its own government. And so it's interesting to hear you talk about that. So I have some interest in that. And being in finance, I've got interest in precious metals. I've watched as metals right now are continuing to go up and doing very well right now. But more importantly, it's really a hedge, right? And so when you talk about some of these other markets, like you mentioned wheat, did I hear you say right?
Wheat, soybean,
wheat, soybean,
oil.
How do you look at something like wheat and soybean and think, okay, what's the value in that, and how do I look at it, right? Like for me, if I'm looking at gold or silver, we're talking about metals, right? It doesn't matter. They might go up, they might go down, they might go sideways. You're not really concerned about that. At some point, the cycles are going to come back around. Where does wheat and soybean fit into?
Yeah. Your research can really become endless. I mean, we've looked at, what's the weather like in Brazil for coffee? We've looked at, the weather in different parts of the world, cold snaps. Is the farming season good? Is it not good? Like, how are logistics right now? We've got massive shipping issues at certain parts during COVID. And, you got to take all of that into account, as well as supply and demand. And then you're looking at, the technicals and the charts with purchase orders and who's purchasing, who's not, etc. Like, the research can really get pretty endless, to be honest.
That sounds really exciting when we're out for drinks and
you want a really boring conversation for like 2 hours? Sure.
Yeah. Really, what's the weather like in Colombia right now? Actually, I tell you the truth, I'm a bit of a nerd. That sounds very interesting, because
it is actually
there are so many different factors that work into that. And in fact, on LinkedIn, I've done different articles and talked about a whole bunch of different items, things like potash, and what we were seeing with regards to the sanctions on Russia, and how all of a sudden Western Canada, and then they started having problems with the railroads and CP Rail, and I was like, oh my goodness, guys, potash is going to go through the roof. And now that doesn't sound like a very sexy topic, but when you're looking at from an investing standpoint, and you're following money, you're thinking, okay, there's going to be some people that get rich in this environment. There's going to be some people that go poor in this environment. And being in real estate, you want to know those areas that are going to be rich and are going to go poor. So what happens to the value of the property. And I think sometimes people don't see the correlations in that, and they're too busy watching what the news is saying about Canadian real estate, and not realizing that every part of the country has its own economics, or, as you're sharing, every part of the world has their own indices, so to say, right? Things that affect them. So
totally.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a weird question here. When you come up and you start talking to somebody about investing, you're a really clean cut guy. You look really young. Do you ever find that people are like, that they have a difficulty trusting you because you're so good looking, you look young? How can you? I've got the gray, and so people are like, oh, okay, he's been around. I've got the wife. I've got 4 kids. They're like, oh yes, he's been beaten down. Do you
Totally.
find any bias like that in the world of business about you being young?
Yeah, yeah, great question. And I've dealt with that a lot, because I started in business so young, 18, 19 years old, doing a lot of
Yeah.
different things. So the way that I figured out how to deal with it the best was I leveraged other people's credibility and I leveraged their age. So I was never saying, hey, I tried it, never worked. I was like, hey, I'm the guy, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It's like, no, it never worked out because I was too young. I look too young. Dude, if I shave, I look like I'm 15, it's crazy. So, and I could only grow a beard until I was like 23 or 24. So I really had to figure out something that would work for me. So I would either have business partners or colleagues or associates that were older than me that were, 35 plus.
I had girls that wanted to date me because I didn't look pretty. They're like, yeah, there's not going to be any competition. I didn't want to date this guy because he was way too pretty. And I was like, I think there was some sort of compliment meant in there, but that's all right. I'll take it. Sorry, you were saying 35.
Yeah, so they were generally like 35 or older. So then I could be
Yeah.
like, hey, I work with this company. I work with this group.
Yeah.
These are the people that are on the team. These are what they do. This is what we do. So I really didn't try to highlight me as being
Right.
the one-stop shop. And to this day too.
Leveraging other people's experience, other
Yeah,
people's knowledge,
exactly. Exactly.
other people's resources, and the
Yeah,
like.
and
Yeah.
depending on the individual too, you can tell with like the individual, maybe they want to try something new and invest with a younger guy, or they want somebody that's older and more experienced. So even to this day, like, I don't even tell a lot of people that I'm like a partner in the company or anything like that. I'll just be like, hey, I'm, one of the directors, operations manager, etc., whatever it is, just so that they don't think like, oh, I'm investing with this guy that, owns the company. I'll be like, oh, I've also got, Lisa or Anthony or Mike or, somebody, and they're, between 50 and 64 years old, right? So then I'd really take a lot of the weight off of me and I put it onto the team because, again, like, the age thing, but you also want to invest into a team opposed to just one individual, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can say for myself, I didn't catch on to that till later on in life. But one of the benefits, and I always say, I love sharing his name. One of my lawyers, his name's Henry Priesman, and he took the time to share some of the knowledge, his knowledge and experience as a lawyer, and I was able to leverage that. And it was amazing because people were like, how do you know this stuff? Well, let me tell you about this lawyer, my lawyer here. And so immediately people started associating us, and they're thinking, well, if a lawyer's willing to associate with him, then it's because so many different things that people are doing, selling. You want to keep the lawyers as far away as possible from what you're trying to say, right? So it's always been a great point. And I've found as you
Yeah.
continue to build your team, people feel more and more secure about what you're doing and the direction you're going because they can really see that you've thought of all of these different angles.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I always want to be the dumbest guy in the room, right? Like, I want my
Oh,
team to be
come
way.
on. Okay, you got to say something about this, Tom, because we say it. We say it, but the alpha males do not want to be the dumbest in the room.
I want you to think I'm the dumbest in the room. Yeah, I don't know. Like that's, I like, again, my curiosity and my willingness to learn. I've always been that way. Like I'd rather learn from people that are doing great than like, I also like to lead others and coach others. But I think due to my age, like I've always been the younger guy. I've always been the one that has to learn. I've always been the guy that doesn't have the experience that the people around him do. um, Today, like everyone I meet with is 35 to 65 years old. I'm still the youngest person all the time. I turn 27 next month, and I have no problem with it. I like it. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even resonate that much with people my age, just because the maturity level is quite different and what we're doing is quite different. But yeah, I would rather learn than explain.
Rather learn than explain. That actually is very powerful. Yeah, because so often people love the sound of their own voice. They want to hear themselves. They want people to be around them, and so that they can talk. And I would say that it's even a difficulty in the area of sales or meeting people, fundraising, any of these types of things, because everyone thinks that I've got to be the highlight of the show. I've got to be all of these things. And if I'm entertaining, then people will want to come along, and they really get that. It can be challenging, especially if you are introverted and you're not sure, what do I know? Do I have the knowledge, the experience, the skills to really be able to showcase? And guys, if you're listening, I know you're out there where you think, I'm probably not good enough to do this at this point. And rather than jumping into an arena, they stay back, they hold back from going into that new business or opportunity that's there for them, because they already screen themselves because they don't have those traits.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm not as good looking as Tom. So clearly, and I don't have those analytical skills, and or I've got a wife and kids. I can't do what Tom does, and
The
they
limiting
hold them.
beliefs.
Yeah, the limiting beliefs. As a mentor yourself, how do you help someone? How do you support someone when they've got these types of limiting beliefs?
I'll come down in just 1 second. I wanted to tag on to what we were saying there before. I believe a lot in talking less but saying more. Like say more in fewer words. And I think, again, that came a lot with my age, because I'd be in meetings with people that are 10, 20, 30, 40 years older than me. And I would not want to say anything stupid. So I'd rather be quiet and then be very selective with the words that I do say, so that I could earn the trust and the respect of these people. Because if you're just blabbing your mouth off and you're not saying anything of value, then people will see right through you. Right. So try to say more with less. And then I've got a couple good friends, Chris Chiavacci and Landon Wishart. It's funny because I just had lunch and dinner with them not too long ago. And after our lunch and dinner, they're both like, okay, that's it, Tom. Next time, I'm asking you all the questions. Every freaking time you do this to me, man. We go for lunch, we go for dinner, and you don't talk at all, and you just ask me questions. I'm like, yeah, because I already know about me. Like what do I want to learn about me? Like, I don't want to talk. I want to ask you questions and learn like how I can help you and what are you working on. Like me talking about what I'm doing doesn't really, sometimes it helps me learn and grow, but I learn way more from somebody else. And they're like, yeah, but you're like, you're the coach, you're the mentor, you're doing this, you're doing that. But still, I'm just curious about you. If you and I went for coffee or lunch, Neil, like you would talk 80% of the time, 70% of the time, unless you really made an effort to ask me more questions. But I'm just introverted that way. Yeah.
Interesting. I'll say something that I've learned as I've gotten a little bit older, and because I naturally gravitated to wanting to hear, wanting to learn. It was always like feeling like I discovered gold or diamonds or something like that. Each time you're talking to someone. Yeah, that's right. Now, interestingly, I've come to a point where I've realized that there are times where I need to be that guy and step forward for everybody else. Okay, maybe I want to selfishly be there and listen and gain knowledge from everyone else, but somebody needs someone to go ahead. Someone needs someone to step forward and to be the leader. And so it's an interesting dynamic when you would rather be digging for the gold, and now you're like, okay, I need to, let me be the face, right? Or let me lead the charge, and maybe I've got to be the one to run through the wall to make space for everyone else to come through. Do you ever notice that in dynamics of leadership?
Definitely. And especially over the past 2 years, 3 years, it's been happening so much more as my teams have got larger. Obviously, I need to lead them, employees, associates, consultants, etc. Um, and then, yeah, like when I did some of it when I was like 19 to 22 as well. I built sales teams of like 35, 50 people when I first started out. So that built a lot of my leadership skills. Um, yeah, it really depends on the situation, the environment, who you're with, what's the meeting about, etc. Determining all the variables, and then, okay, is this a place for me to step up and talk a lot? Or is this a place for me to lead? Is this a place for me to learn and listen? Is this a place for me to support, my coworker that's the leader? So I'm going to be there to support him. Am I trying to close a sale? Accounting for all the variables and then acting appropriately.
Yeah. I actually heard a great analogy. Someone said, "How do you know who the leader is?" And they said it's kind of like who should be the bass in a band. Obviously, the guy that can sing bass, right? And so I've found that when I step into a room now, I've got to evaluate. Okay, who's playing what instrument and what's needed of me at this point in time, especially as a parent, right? I'm always assessing that with my kids. What do they need right now? Do they need a friend? Do they need the father? Do they need the leader? Do they need the rebel? Or what is it that they need? And move forward with that. And I find it's the same in business. As you move through partnerships, you always have to evaluate those things.
Totally.
Now, let me ask you, because our time is almost up here. Because we went into so many different directions here, and guys, if you're listening and it feels a little schizophrenic today, sorry about that. But I think Tom has been very humble and shared a lot of life experience and his journey. What I'm curious about is, what are you excited about now and going into the rest of the year? What are you excited about? What are you working on? What direction are you moving in?
Great question. What I'm excited about the most is really like enjoying the journey. How we talked about before, over the past year and a half, before I hired my new business coach and mentor that I've been working with for the past year, he's really, really helped me slow down and enjoy the journey. And like my definition of success now is, pursuing worthwhile destinations on the most enjoyable journey possible with great company, right? Because the destination is not guaranteed. You don't know if you're going to get there. You could get hit by a bus tomorrow. So you better be with people that you enjoy, and you better be building something or working on, traveling towards something on a journey that you enjoy. So just really living in more like joy and happiness and excitement and less stress and anxiety and pressure. Because just the obvious, it makes life so much more enjoyable. And then obviously the big audacious goals, multi-billion-dollar net worth, and all those kind of great things as we progress, building companies that change society and help mankind and progress and really give back and help people and give money to friends and family and everybody to assist them, do a lot of philanthropical things as we progress and travel and all those kind of great things. But really just be present and enjoy the process instead of constantly chasing the carrot.
Yeah. Wow. Well, perhaps reevaluating what the carrot is.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's one of the things
That
that
changes all the time.
Yeah, it does. And somewhere along the way, you realize that for me, somewhere along the way, I just realized I don't care how much money you have. If you're not I'm going to say good human being, decent human being. If you're not someone that I want to spend time with, then I'm sure there's other people that you can do business with. I don't want to spend time with some of these people that don't respect people around them, that are mean, that are looking down. I'm like, you know what? I'm sure there's someone else you can do business with, and because I only have so many days on this planet, I want to spend it with people that I want to spend it with, and including my family and friends, and developing new friendships. And that doesn't mean that we're all perfect people. It just means that hey, we've agreed we're going in a direction, and we believe that there's a certain amount of decency and in how we should treat one another and who we need to be for ourselves and for the people around us.
Yeah, totally agree.
Wow. Okay. Well, Tom, if people are trying to get a hold of you, we're going to put this stuff in the notes, but where can they find you? What if they want to hear more of your story? If for the ladies out there, if they want to hit you up, where do they find you?
Pretty much all social media platforms with Tom Mays. You can Google my name, go to tommays.com as well, and then altezacapital.com. But yeah, I'm pretty much, you can just Google it and you'll find me everywhere.
Listen, Tom, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was great having you sharing your insights, maybe even some of the items that you want to look at more, where they came from, where you come from. A lot of interesting stuff that you shared with us today, and I wish you all the best success in business going forward, and in growing wheat and soybean and the weather in Colombia. And we definitely want to maybe another time we can find out more about NFTs and that whole digital space, because that sounds like a whole conundrum in itself. That sounds like its own beast that needs its own time to talk about. So thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us today.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Neil, for having me on the podcast. I love your podcast. I've been a follower for a while and greatly appreciate it. And thank you for the great conversation.
That's Tom Mays, and that's another episode of the Leadership to Wealth podcast. I'm your host, Neil D'Souza, and we'll see you guys next week, shortening the learning curve to building wealth.